In 6th generation form, Subaru's Forester serves up a very similar recipe for loyal customers wanting a more seriously capable kind of mid-sized SUV. It's still a full hybrid, it's still great off-road, but rural folk might now find this car just that bit easier to live with.
Very few mid-sized SUVs these days are properly capable in the rough, and even fewer of these are full hybrids, as this Forester has been since 2019. Or at least it claims to be. Actually, the e-Boxer drivetrain's battery is so small, at 0.57 kilowatt hours, that it's not much more use than a mild hybrid system would be, which means that it's mainly employed for parking manoeuvres or inching along in heavy traffic. You certainly won't feel it powering the car alone at normal driving speeds. We'd hoped that Subaru might have evolved this 2-litre direct injection electrified powertrain for this 6th generation SL model, but in fact it's much as before, albeit with a few legislation-driven tweaks. The brand says that there are 24 technical improvements aimed at enhancing driving characteristics. These updates have also unfortunately reduced this unit's previous 148 bhp output to 134, slowing the 0-62 mph time to 12.2 seconds on the way to 116 miles an hour. That sprint time assumes selection of the faster of the two drive settings, S for Sport. The other more relaxed mode is I for Intelligent. Perhaps more significantly, the torque figure is slightly down on the previous Model 2 from 190 to 182 Newton meters, though Subaru is keen to point out that the towing limit remains unaltered at 1,872 kilograms. That towing capability is helped by the provision of the same symmetrical permanent four-wheel drive system as before. Most rivals have an on-demand 4x4 setup that only activates the rear wheels when a lack of traction demands it, by which point off-road you might already be stuck. That's a lot less likely to happen in a Forester, something also aided by the same generous 220 millimeters of ground clearance as before. This is vastly more than most rivals, which Subaru considers essential since 84% of Forester customers live in rural areas and appreciate the relatively lofty 500mm wading depth. Further helping in the mud is hill descent control and the brand's X-Mode system with its two off-road drive settings, deep snow and mud and snow and dirt. Where the Forester needed to improve though is in its on-road demeanour. To that end, the Subaru global platform that it sits on has been substantially evolved, now using 27 meters of structural adhesive instead of the previous 8 meters. As a result, it's lighter and 10% more torsionally rigid. If you'd hoped this might significantly reduce body roll at speeds around tight bends, you'll be a little disappointed. There's still plenty of that. But since the Forester will hardly ever be driven in that kind of manner, this is a lot less relevant than the fact that the structural improvements have enhanced body control over bumps. Not so effective are the changes supposedly made to sharpen up the steering, which retains its previous rather spongy over-assisted feel. It'll all mean that a convert from a less capable SUV might still think the tarmac drive dynamics to be behind the class standard, and also might object to the gruff Boxer engine note and relatively lethargic Lineartronic CVT auto gearbox with its 7 steps or ratios. But if you want to go almost everywhere in an SUV of this sort, you might well now think the latest version of this Forester to be a much better compromise than it was before. Well, a Subaru loyalist would certainly recognise this as a Forester, solid and boxy. There are no swept-backed crossover genes here. The Forester has been getting progressively bigger over the generations, and this one follows suit, now 30mm longer at 4.67 metres, but still 1.73 metres tall, with the same large boxy glass area and great all-round sight lines, thanks to this now lower belt line, and we'll come back to that. The main visual changes with this 6th generation model lie here at the more modern-looking front end, where trim strips flow out of a central brand badge into these sleeker LED steering responsive headlamps. The back is also quite different for this SL generation design, with spaced out model lettering across the tailgate, which also sports an e-Boxer badge and a wide black mid-level strip to emphasise this Mark VI model's 15mm increase in width. But what's more important are, of course, the changes that lie within. So let's take a look. Modern segment rivals these days almost always hit you with a screen fest behind the wheel, and sure enough, a big 11.6-inch central screen features here, but it isn't the defining element of this cabin, which instead has been designed to be eminently more sensible in its priorities. So you sit quite high, there's great all-round vision, and as you settle into the 10-way power-operated heated seats with their effective lumbar adjustment, you begin to feel the benefit of a medically influenced front chair design that improves back support and reduces head movement, apparently by up to 44%. Subaru cabins are usually models of wipe clean durability, but the difference with this 6th generation Forester is that this doesn't mean acres of cheap feeling scratchy plastic. Instead, almost every surface seems now to be coated in the kind of thick rubberized plastic you might find on the sole of a better quality outdoor shoe, which suits the intended all-weather vibe, but won't please those looking for slush-moulded premium ambience. The other thing you might really like about this car is the excellent all-round vision you get out of it. We referenced the reason for that earlier, the way that Subaru has lowered the side window line by 14mm compared to the previous generation model. As before, there's plenty of space in the back. You'd expect that boxy, glassy shape to provide for an airy feel and prodigious levels of headspace, and so it proves. That lower window line makes a welcome change from the way that rival model rear cabins are becoming gradually more claustrophobic with their shallower windows and rising belt lines. The cabin's wide enough and the centre tunnels low enough to properly admit a third middle-seated adult. There's no option of a third seating row, so time to take a look out back. With this 6th generation model, shallower bumpers aim to make boot access easier, and the powered tailgate rises to reveal a square and usable space 508 litres in size. Flattening the rear bench can be done easily though with cargo sidewall catches, and with everything folded, boot capacity rises to 1,732 litres. Normally a more capable car is a more expensive one to run. You'd certainly expect that the permanent symmetrical four-wheel drive system of this Forester would exact more of a fuel and emissions penalty than would be found on most other rivals, cars that trundle around in two-wheel drive most of the time, with all-wheel traction only being introduced when needed. Thanks to the hybrid technology, you might be pleasantly surprised on that score, but don't get your hopes up too high. The official combined cycle figure is 34.9 mpg, with CO2 emissions at 183 grams per kilometre. In summary, most hybrid SUVs are in some way compromised when it comes to things like towing and off-roading, but this one isn't. It's fashionable without being trendy and built to last while never feeling utilitarian. In short, it's the kind of car it really ought to be, a vehicle in which four-wheel drive is fundamental rather than simply an optional extra. And as a result, it's one of the best SUVs in its class to buy if you really plan on using it to its full potential. True, the result may not be as smoothly cultured as less capable rivals, but when conditions worsen, you won't care about that, and you'll probably be glad that you chose one of these.